All right, thank you for that beautiful introduction, future me. We are here with Hi Rez, Ajax, and PonPon. How are you guys doing?
How you doing?
Yo, glad to be here.
All right, so this will probably be our most official interview yet. We've got, the guys who make the decisions for Smite. And speaking about that, I'm going to go right into you, Pon. I feel like I see everybody getting a lot of hate, like a lot of like just really mean stuff thrown their way. And I don't really ever see you getting that hate. And as someone who makes decisions about the game of Smite, I feel like you deserve a little bit more of that community hatred. What's going on there? What kind of magic do you wield over there?
Like, just in general, why I think I tend to get less hate than anyone else is I came from the community, right? Like, I was a pro player. I was really active, even when when people were talking about back then about making changes, I would oppose them or like them on and discuss why I like them. And so I think that gave me some credibility kind of going in. So like people know me and people are familiar with me. And also I spend an obnoxious amount of time like wording myself really carefully. Like I'll type out a message, delete it, type it out, delete it, type it out, delete it, reword it. And my goal is try and make sure that my thoughts are heard really clearly and making sure that I kind of hit every single point that I need to. And so I think that's also pretty appreciated. So I think I've avoided hate just mainly because I come from the community, but partially because I'm like really careful about wording, and that kind of comes from community management, like working on that for a while.
And you are a fantastic community manager, but he's also a really good Smite player and just a generally really nice guy. And I think also the community is just super used to interacting with Pon, even through some of the toughest issues a long way back. So, getting bad news sometimes from Pon, it doesn't feel as maybe extreme to them. They don't have these reactions because they're kind of, they're used to it. So they're familiar with you. The community really knows you really well.
So that would be
that
would be like my next question. Like you going into that, is it most like I feel like most people don't associate you with like balance changes though. Like you're just Pon. You do the patch notes. You reply to our community questions. That's all you do really. Like what do you actually do? I feel like that's like your like everyday casual Smite fan. Like your subreddit like browser lurker whatever. Like doesn't really understand what you do. So therefore, like you're not like the focal point of like balance rage. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I think a lot of it, like if you want to my day to day, I recently became system designer, and so I started working on a lot of things like how the clans work, how ranked works, and like working through and like deciding what we want to try and do with these systems going forward, adding new systems. But like since I've been here at Hi Rez, especially once I moved over to QA, I've been involved in like daily play tests and like just general like kind of water cooler discussions about how the game's going. And so like I'll give my opinion here and there, and then the balance team will decide to take it or not. And I'll give my opinion on feedback, and the people working on it will decide whether they want it or not. And only really recently have I had a lot more direct impact on those versus just being like, well, here's my opinion. So it could just be that more hate's coming my way because then I have my hand actually in it a little bit more. But I've kind of always been here in the back, like giving my opinions and suggestions. And some of the things that like have come out have been actually one of my suggestions. So I won't say which ones, but there have been some.
Pon's always been a trusted voice, and that's really one of the primary things he did even before design as a community manager is not just outward facing, but inward facing. He was doing a lot of collecting the community's feelings and thoughts on things and then putting them in a really easily presentable form so the rest of the dev team could understand them. So he's kind of the translator. In both directions. When the devs make changes and we want to tell it to the players, Pon phrases that really carefully, make sure it goes over well. And when the players are all there out, like, using all caps or profanities or whatever, things like that, Pon looks through that, finds the important, repetitive, solid feedback in those types of threats and delivers them to us in that direction too. So even before design, he had a large impact just through that process.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I think that's a pretty good answer to that. Ajax, I got. Before we get like really into the meat and potatoes of this interview, I gotta say I'm feeling a little slighted from you, man. You had FreightTrain reach out, asked you to come on to the show as the interview, and you were like, "Yeah, I'm kind of interested." And then he told you, "All right, well, our host is LHS. He'll be the guy to talk to." And so I came in, I replied, silence. FreightTrain replies. Yeah. Immediate answer.
He was upset, Ajax.
I was legitimately upset. I was feeling a little spurned, and then Freight's getting all the love. I feel like I'm losing my job here. What's going on with that?
I'm sorry, man. I just like replied to the one contact for this type of meeting first, and then just kept it there. It was more of a consistency thing than anything else. I assure you, it wasn't like playing favorites. It was really just
He looked up.
maybe it was the eager in the name,
He looked up the
the
elo.
logo.
Yeah. He looked up our elo as well and just found out that I
Oh,
was
that's
better.
just-
So he was like, yeah.
All right, that's cold. That's
Yeah, he
cold.
only talks to people above a certain MMR
I
count.
was just trying to have one conversation instead of many, but I hope you don't take it too personally. I don't mean that.
No, it's fine. I
We'll
just
have to play a few matches of Smite sometime.
oh yeah.
Get to know each.
Oh yeah, especially when I get down there. I mean, I'll be everywhere this summer. But okay, so let's dive into this. So I guess the first things first is the decision to get rid of rituals. Since season 4 came out, that has been probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, talking point for people. Overwhelmingly negative. And then I feel like those who didn't mind it really didn't speak up at all. I feel like those who liked rituals didn't really advocate for them as much as they could have. At the end of the day, what was the breaking point for you guys to finally get rid of rituals at this point?
It was a combination of community and pro feedback all kind of coming together in that big eager luminosity matchup, where people really started talking about it even more focused than before. That was really kind of the final straw. Ultimately, what we made that decision for was that we had a really clear goal that we think we really clearly met. There was just a couple of side effects. And we also had plenty of really good design options in the direction to go with rituals. The downside is we didn't want to rush any one of them, or choose from our options, choose one that turned out to be suboptimal and have to change them again. So as opposed to taking the whole community through that trip with us, it made a lot more sense for us to just pull them for now, identify the strengths and weaknesses, take a lot more time on iteration so we can really feel good about them when we get ready for our next version.
Mm-hmm. I think to add to that too, it kind of goes to how season 4 went as a whole. We introduced a lot of new things, some character rebalances, a lot of item changes, the jungle timer change, new portal demon, new oracles. And when we first threw all those out there, a lot of them were met with kind of resistance or hate. And as we've gone through patches 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, a lot of the pro players especially have given us feedback that they really like the state of the game. People have learned to play around the oracles and Fire Giant, or not Fire Giant, the portal demon. And so when you add all these new features, even if there's a lot of outcry, it's somewhat good to see how they play out. And I said that in the post. Seeing how they play out and seeing how they actually kind of evolve as players get their hands on them lets us really know, is this something that we want to keep and keep pushing forward, or is it something that we want to remove? It took us till about 4.5 to decide that we wanted to remove rituals, but that kind of conversation was already happening around 4.3 and 4.4.
We had plans for some relatively large changes to all of rituals as a system, even before that.
Yeah.
But there was still, we weren't as confident on them as we would like to be before we just pushed them right to live.
Right. And I know personally, the eager luminosity match, that was the high profile match. That's the two Titans from NA going at it, and then that first game where it became the Battle of the Rituals. I mean, personally, I loved the end of that match. That was probably one of my favorite matches I've ever watched of Smite. And looking at Twitter, looking at Twitch chat, everybody was just, downpour of negativity, and just Twitter also just nothing but bad to be said about the end of that match. I personally, I guess from you guys, looking at that match, did you guys see negativity there, or did you guys like the way the end of that match went?
Personally, I think it was a bit mixed, right? Seeing how the high level teams use these new things and see how they use it well and decisions they make at some level of theory crafting, I think it's kind of cool that people sold boots to buy this for a key point in the match. But I can also see why players wouldn't like that experience, wouldn't like losing out kills, wouldn't like people that they push out of fight coming back really quickly. And so it was mixed to me. I actually was more on the side of, I think it's really interesting, but I also just like teams executing a strategy really well, whether or not it's positive. So I'm a bit biased in that regard, but again, we saw a lot of negativity from everyone. That's kind of.
I mean, we
the key
definitely
point.
saw the feedback and definitely the Twitch chat, and that was a bit of a snowball effect. I really feel from the Twitch chat, which was, this was the hot copy paste, so everyone's throwing it out there, whether they really believe it or not. From my own personal, spectator point of view, I do not think Rituals harmed that match in any way. I believe that match was extremely hyped to watch. I believe there was really cool plays and really good decisions made. I don't believe that Rituals had any sort of unfair impact on the outcome of that match. I was happy watching it. I was enjoying it thoroughly. The chat, on the other hand, was a bit rougher. So there was obvious reasons why we would have put this feature in the game in the first place. We felt a lot of really strong positives came from it. But it was clear from the community standpoint whether or not why they didn't like them. It was just clear that they didn't. And I have a couple reasons why I think that is, and I'd be happy to elaborate more on the goals and downfalls of Rituals if you'd like to do that now.
I think we'll get to that next. Freight, I think you've got some things to say about that whole Eager Luminosity match and just Rituals as a whole.
I guess, I watched the game and it was entertaining. I guess the biggest comment and concern was a lot of people felt that it covered LG's mistakes that were made, and that, Eager stole a Fire Giant, and then that was really it. But, that LG was actually making more mistakes later on, and that the Rituals were more covering them up because they would back, rally, frenzy, back, rally, frenzy, and it was like this ongoing process of just an onslaught of backing, rally, and frenzying it. It was just like, what could you do? And it was more like they couldn't end without those type of deal, and that Eager's hold was too strong. So I guess it was like, did you feel that it covered any of the mistakes? Or, again, like you said, Pon, it was a strategy that they implemented. And as a fan and as a team player, I felt like they implemented that strategy. That was their game plan. We're good. We have the money. Let's back. Let's siege. That's their siege attempt. And I think that was good.
That match kind of highlights the kind of decision we ended up making. Rituals have these really high-end implications of players can utilize these, they can augment their strategies, and at their best, that's what they're used for. Teams make really solid plays around it, they make really solid decision-making around it, and the team that's better using them is the one that excels. And that's kind of something that we saw often where teams had better use of the Rituals, they ended up getting more of a lead, and actually it was a really important part to them. But we did also see the downsides, especially at kind of more casual level play, or in the worst situations where you got pushed out of a fight because you made a mistake. Oh, well, mistake doesn't matter because you can teleport back in. And so at their best, they have a lot of really positive things, but at their worst, they have some negatives. And so part of the reason why we're moving them now is we want to keep a lot of those positives of the kind of strategies that can develop from them and the good execution, but limit the negatives that can happen, like it covering up mistakes, like you said.
Yeah, I love it. That's a great answer. No, I appreciate it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So,
all right. So moving into Rituals and being removed and then possibly being looked at and coming back in another shape. Can we expect to see Rituals coming back, or are we going to be seeing something more akin to relics, more relic options, maybe more relic slots, or more diverse relic tree come out of this experiment that was the Rituals?
Key goal behind implementing Rituals in the first place was to add additional variants and meaningful decisions to the end game. And I mean the very late end game. We were discussing options for Season 4. We were like, a kind of spot we're missing things in Smite's overall flow is once you finish your build and you're just kind of contesting Fire Giant and Phoenixes and bases pushes and stuff like that, you don't really have many options. You have the 450 power pots and you have the 3K pots and you have wards. And all three of those are pretty known quantities. And we wanted to find a way for players to be able to empower their builds beyond just dealing more damage, taking less damage, or seeing each other. And that's really where the ideas of Rituals came from. That worked extremely well. We had, a lot of players prioritizing these Rituals different, over potions and even changing some of their end game build for it. That was really what we wanted. I think some of the issues we had as far as downfalls and failures with the system was that mainly the effects were just simply too strong. I think this is where you get this feedback of they're not making cool plays, they're just covering their mistakes. That's because they're very powerful effects. This is something you always see with abilities that are perceived as overpowered or too easy to hit. You never get praise for using them well, But if you miss that air result and you get 0 chains, everyone's BMing you. So rituals were really just a little bit too powerful. And this is, I mean, we probably should have seen this, and we iterated on them a lot as we were balancing them. We made them more expensive even before shipping them. They had some other effects. We had some other powerful, like other things we nerfed, we softened before even the launch of season 4. It's just clear that we didn't quite go far enough with that. So we really look going forward. I'm not saying that we're bringing back rituals. We might not call them that, but we do seek to still fill this void of once you've completed your build and you're just kind of contesting a few key objectives on the map. We want to give you a decision besides, do I just buy a 450 or do I wait for 3K? Like, we want another decision in that place.
I think in general we're still working through a lot of the decisions on like what that'll be. And so like it could have things like limitations added to it. It could have things like different power effects, different costs, different methods of like obtaining them. And so we're looking at all of that and making sure that like when it comes back, it's going to look a little bit different from what you saw at least. It might look majorly different. We're not really close enough there to say anything definitively.
Yeah. So one of the things that Retake SPL prides itself on is before any changes were made to rituals, we talked about those changes on the previous show, and then the very next patch notes, the changes would happen. I mean,
obviously they got all the ideas.
Yeah, all of them from us. But it felt really nice for us to be talking about it, and then you guys were right there making the changes, like and we're the community, so like as the surrogates for the community, it felt really good to see the stuff that we talked about, as our brain trust, and then seeing that into the game. One of the things that we had kicked around and discussed was the idea of something like an EMP or like an anti-ritual. So something like, say, you go into the team fight, they pop their frenzy, they pop, whatever, they have the combat blink ready. Then you've got like your little support sitting in the back, and he goes into initiate, and then pops like an EMP anti-ritual. And then for the next like 2 seconds or 3 seconds, rituals don't work, ritual effects stop, or something like that. Is that something that we could possibly see? Like adding more counterplay? Because I feel like that is the reason why Smite is as great as it is. And the reason that we keep going back to Smite is the ability to counterplay. The addition of like Kuzenbo is like a great example of maybe not having the best release, but the idea behind him being this anti-burst character is solid, and I loved it. And I feel like a lot of people love it, and like that idea of adding more counterplay is definitely the way to go. What are you guys thoughts on that?
Just the idea of counterplay is really solid. It's something that like whenever new gods are being developed and like balance changes are happening and just general gameplay flow is concerned, counterplay is a really important factor, and so we try and add it where we can.
Always.
That's why like the relic system exists. You can get an early option, you can get one at level 12, and the relics provide very different effects. Rituals were kind of also meant to do that, to give you some later game options. Like you could sit there and be like, well, if this team is really good at team fighting, maybe we can get around them and surprise them by teleporting, stuff like that. One that just stops rituals, I couldn't say so much, but like that would be a counterplay option. It might be a little bit limited in scope, and we've seen actually with limited scope things that like they tend just not to get picked up, even if they are a solid counter. You might see them once in a blue moon. But I do think that like that is another thing that like didn't feel necessarily that great when someone blinked away from you. You didn't feel like they really counterplayed you there. They just kind of got away, and you didn't have a way to chase them anymore.
You blinked at them too.
Well, yeah, but you have to have that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
and we've definitely discussed types of effects like that before. The keys things for me are keeping diversity in our god roster. So a lot of things, like we get a lot of feedback from players that are like, oh, make a relic that's a Janus portal, or a ritual that's this, and it's like that's kind of some things we like to keep unique to the god, and we don't just want this type of effect being on everybody. And the other thing is visual communication. This is one thing I harp on a lot with the design team. And that's one thing that generally like affects like silence, disarm, and cripple are not as good at, because it's very easy to be hit by one of those types of effects and just be mashing all your keys and not knowing why things aren't happening. Mm-hmm. That's why I'm a really big fan of the silence cripples that have persistent things attached to them. Like it's pretty easy to know that you're inside Nox bubble. Right. Like that makes sense. But getting hit with maybe just Rama arrow, getting clipped in the back, and then not really knowing in a team fight that you can't dash. So things like that are things we're always looking at. And when you've got something like an AoE silence, or even some sort of situational silence that's based off of a pulse type of effect, you're gonna end up with possibly some confusion there.
Mm.
Although there's definitely many game design, we just want to make sure that we take the time to worry about these communication issues as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
So speaking of like, not, having like a knee jerk reaction, there was something in Pon's subreddit post that I know Gore particularly loves. So Gore, why don't you talk to us a little bit?
Well, so this was one that I think it really spoke to me, and I was telling LHS a little bit about this, was because after playing Smite for so many years, because I started at the end of 2012, and I know Freight and LHS, like when you pick it up, and we think back to how things were, a lot of people always, there's the nostalgia factor of, oh, I loved the jungle when it was like this, but one of the things that was going on with the balance team was that, like you had mentioned, knee-jerk reactions were something that were a little bit more common. If a god was perceived as overpowered, then within a few days things might change, even though it might have just been, or even underpowered, it might have just been something that was going wrong somewhere else. It might not have been the actual god. And one thing that you had put in your post was saying that through the years the balance team had learned a lesson about that, and that perception, that changes based on perception should not be something that is done knee-jerk wise just because perception can change, I mean, immediately over time. And I think you were talking about Scotty at the time, but we've seen that countless times over the years. And with that, I feel like, did that heavily kind of factor into with the season 4 changes? I mean, a lot is changing, and you were really patient with everything.
That's something I brought up earlier on, right? We threw a whole bunch of things at season 4, and one of the big things was at season 3 we had a whole bunch of big changes, and in the early patches we reverted them very quickly. And that's something we kind of always look back on is like, well, what if they had played out for a little bit longer? Like, could we have learned more about what was wrong with them? Could we have learned maybe that there was ways to tweak it a little bit better? And so going into season 4, we had a lot of changes, and we knew that there was going to be some resistance to that, but we wanted to make sure that it actually got a chance to run its course. It actually got a chance to be in the hands of players for a while. And I think overall we've seen that worked out pretty well. And that's also just, the lesson that balance team has learned, right? Like, some character will get a change, and then it's really easy to see all the negative feedback and be like, well, we just need to revert that. But oftentimes if you just kind of hold it, be like, we can change this next patch if it still doesn't work. We can change it 2 patches down the road if it still doesn't work. And doing that lets people get hands on it. And sometimes it makes character really good. Sometimes the community's right is also the character's really bad now. Like, it can go anywhere. But in general, it's easier to let it run its course for a patch or 2, see how it performs, and then make an adjustment rather than being like, people don't like this, we're going to change it immediately. And sometimes there is room for that, right? Like with Hell, right? We had a lot of negative feedback immediately on the Hell change. And that's what PTS was there for, because we knew we wanted to make iterations on it. And so we were comfortable making iterations there, where something like, how does Portal Demon influence the game, is super far reaching and high implications. And we want to see how that actually plays out for a while before any other changes happen.
And I feel like for season 4, that has actually really helped, because like you had said, things like the Portal Demon, I remember the first day, like the day it was announced, of course, Twitch chat being as volatile as it is, I mean, it just blew up. No one liked the idea of it. And now when we're,
the amount of pro players that talk to me at the event,
but like competitively, that's one of the best objectives to watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, actually, the season 4 conquest map changes seem to have been very successful. And whenever there's big change about very competitive aspects of your game, you're going to get that kind of reaction from players. I mean, there's always a very mixed reaction, I feel like. So I'm glad we stuck with it. And we've been mostly hearing very positive things from pros about the timings on the map, the oracles, and the Portal Demon.
Yeah, so that's actually, it kind of goes back to the whole ritual thing, right? Like, we held on all of them, and we ended up finally removing rituals. Part of that was every pro player was saying, we really like the state of the map right now, except this one thing, and it was rituals. And so after running 5 patches, that's when we like, okay, the feedback, it's definitely something that people haven't learned over time or are not liking over time. And so that's why that got pulled versus other things.
Mm-hmm. So I have like a 2-part follow-up to that whole discourse is, going into season 4, all these changes, the kind of, what would you say the overall tone you guys are setting for Smite this year is, and what the goal and where you guys are trying to like kind of lead Smite is, and then going into all the changes in that, are we going to ever see more big changes like this? I know there's a contingent of people out there asking for a bigger map, more lanes, more jungle, whatever, what have you. Are those the types of things we might see, or is that not Smite? Is that not the kind of change that we're really going to see?
Yeah, sure. A couple things here. So first of all, outside of just Smite, we kind of have the Hi Rez philosophy. You know, we're very quick to react. And we're very close to our community. This is just something that has carried through to Smite. You know, we want to be very in touch with our player base and our competitive players and things like that. So that generally informs our game design decisions a lot of the time. We take a lot of it from feedback. And as far as going forward with Smite, I can say you will definitely see, you know, some big patches throughout this year. At very calculated times throughout the year, we'll have a larger than normal balance patch. We'll have some larger things changing. Season 5 is going to be another set of large changes. I believe we've already gone on record talking about that, have we, Pon?
Yeah, we have.
Hi Rez Chris has already discussed it, but we're planning for a complete re-arting and, you know, large design changes, possibly redesigning the Conquest map for Season 5.
Yeah.
Ooh,
so that's already planned.
yeah.
That's coming. Art update and design changes for Season 5. We're working on it right now. You know, we want to be really careful about that. So we're starting super early, and it's one of those things that we're going to take as much time as we need on it. But so that's pretty much the plan going forward. As far as the tone of Smite in Season 4, we really wanted to bring some new things to the game. This was happening already. We saw through the new Clash map and our new adventure system that wasn't really announced as clearly as the rest of the changes as part of Season 4, but all of us here knew it was part of that in Season 4. And though we had those two changes, we're a little bit more focused on kind of our casual player base. And we always want to make sure we have things in Smite for the casual and the competitive. So when we were looking at kind of our balance for our Season 4 launch early before it, we saw a lot of these cool features, but not something that are really like our SPL players would be that excited about. So we wanted to make sure we had things for them to be excited about us too. And that's where you got things like a lot of the item changes, a lot of the conquest map changes, a lot of the new features like relic upgrading and rituals. So we're really trying to keep that balance. Like, I mean, I don't want to sound too cliche, but it's kind of one of those, you know, fun or easy to play, difficult to master type of themes with our casual and competitive balance. We want to have features that you can jump into Smite and be kind of very, very new at it, but find whatever interests you. And then we want to make sure we have the features that are still challenging players who've been here. You know, me and Pon and all you guys on the podcast have been playing the game for 3 years or more. We need things to still be interesting and challenging to you guys as well. So we really try to find the balance there, as well as the balance within the game.
Yeah, I pretty much mirror that sentiment. It's something that's like Smite's super interesting. It changes over time, but like in Season 4 especially, we saw like Season 3 had mostly the same stuff happening in the Conquest map. Season 4 is very different. There's a lot of different things happening in Conquest map. There's varieties of starts. There's things like adventures, which are completely new. Like we saw a little bit of success last year with that, and now we're just expanding that system.
Right.
And knowing upcoming what some of the stuff is, it's actually insane.
But the key for us is that Smite Conquest 5v5 is still clearly Smite.
Yes.
You understand the rule, the base rules. You know, we were just really wanted this year to layer in another extra complexity into that for really competitive.
So it really sounds like with Season 4, you guys were trying to just set a new precedent for Smite going forward, like the big changes, adding things, you know, really capitalizing on what makes Smite great with, you know, the counterplay, and then easy to learn, difficult to master. I feel like that mirrors Smite perfectly.
The Season 5 patch might not be as many things, but there will be some big changes. It's really whether how you quantify really big change, a few really big changes or a lot of smaller changes. I mean, it's hard to really to judge that right now as far as setting a precedent, but Smite is going to be continuing to be iterated on and a living, breathing game as far as doing less of just kind of keeping things too cemented, I guess.
Yeah, making sure that every kind of week that you come, or every 2 weeks you come see the patch note show, there could be something new and interesting that like you wouldn't have expected, or that the game is going to feel like something you can log into and have a new experience with.
And with at the same time,
keeping the core stuff.
Being really clear with the if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
You know, we always try to be really careful about that. Our changes are generally pinpointed at specific things that we have a couple good reasons of why they could be improved.
Okay. All right. And so at the top of the show, we got into Pon about not getting flack, and that some people get a lot of flack. Ajax, you're one of those people. You are
Yeah, it's all
a
right.
constant lightning rod of hate, and ever since you kind of took this, bigger role as a designer, it's just been a constant storm of shit posting and memes of just, oh, Ajax doesn't know how to play his own game. Ajax doesn't play Conquest. Ajax is a Loki main. All of these things just
Do you
talking.
mean Loki? Hold on, that's a serious question. We
I
might have
actually
to.
not very. I play very little Loki.
Okay,
Here, I'll
good.
explain myself. I play Loki.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah, I
God.
know we can talk about this. This is definitely a good thing to talk about. So let's start with a brief history lesson,
Mm-hmm.
which is I've been playing Smite since literal day one closed beta.
Okay.
I was a global agenda, max level global agenda player for Hi Rez games. I loved Hi Rez games. I got an invite to the closed beta through my global agenda guild mates, clan mates. We all started playing Conquest. I'm talking side jungles. I was there pre-Guan, pre-release Guan,
Yep.
playing Smite in Conquest, maining supports. I main support. Sobek was my first god. I played Smite like crazy throughout that closed beta year. And this was actually while I was in the process of studying to get my master's degree in game design. And I continue to play Smite. Smite has been my favorite game and my most played game. I take my breaks for other things, for my Dark Souls, my Pokemons, my other pocket favorites.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm always going back to play Smite. While I was studying and while I was working in some other games companies, working as a designer, I was always still playing Smite. And then when things kind of went crazy at my last company and they shut down the entire studio with no warning, I was actually already prepping my Hi Rez application because I really wanted to work here, really wanted to work on Smite. And the recruiter just called me out of the blue because they heard about the layoff. So I didn't even really apply for Smite as design. They just kind of saw the opportunity and it was a mutual benefit there. And upon being interviewed, Zier and Rory and Gandhi and Fish and a lot of the designers who were here before me said they were overwhelmingly excited to hire me because of my experience and my gameplay. So, however you want to judge my current habits or whichever type of game modes I queue more or less, the fact of the matter is I've been playing the game since the very beginning. I've mastered every god. I mean, I can play at a pretty reasonable, hardcore casual type of level. And I have all of the same formal training as any other game designer would be at my age, or possibly even more.
Yeah.
Combine those things together, that makes me a pretty good candidate to be working on Smite. And a lot of this got turned on me when we started making me a little bit more
Forward-facing.
Yeah, forward-facing. Actually, I was working at kind of as lead designer and kind of a temporary role just to make sure it was going to work. And we were not necessarily revealing all of this all the time. This kind of thing happens a lot. They were testing me out, and I was driving a lot of changes in the game for months before Scott Zier even made the first post about me.
Yeah.
And that post was actually met with overwhelming positivity. People had really liked my gods, the gods that I designed, and that's part of the reason why the promotions and why we made the changes here too, is because not just the players but everybody at Hi Rez was extremely happy with all of my work too.
Mm-hmm.
So then things kind of turned on me at a certain point. When a certain person chose to focus on certain things that may or may not be important, but the community kind of took it and ran with it, and it's nothing that's, I think, really harming anything. I don't really think that I've seen it devolve into such inaccuracies at this point. Like, it's gotten all the way to the point where I checked a random Reddit thread and someone who was unhappy with the balance change was like, of course, Ajax only plays duel, so no shit. Which is not even correct. Like, the meme is Joust. Like, if you want a meme right, like, get the meme right. It's like making the brain meme but using hearts. It's like, it's not the right thing.
Yeah.
You got to use, it was Joust. So, I happen to play a lot of pre-mades with my buddies. So we played Conquest all the time. Then they invented more game modes. I was there for when there was only Conquest, and they added Arena. It wasn't really our thing. They added Joust. We really liked that. We used to play whatever we had a party for size for. We didn't have 5 that often. So I played a lot of different things. I had a really good time queuing the ranked Joust when it first came out. It was the new thing. Never thought that achieving the highest rank in your own game. By the way, that's a rare achievement for a game developer on any game. By the way,
You can tell he's a little bit salty about it.
Just a little.
Just a little
Not
salty,
around.
not a whole lot, just lightly salted, lightly salted Ajax.
And you're doing with someone who's currently in the SPL.
I mean, yeah, I play with SPL caliber players solo queue casual games into SPL players fairly often based on no cheating or any sort of
just your MMR.
any sort of adjustment.
Hacks of MMR.
I want
hacks of MMR.
documentation
Yeah.
on your MMR. I want to see the MMR returns,
We can get you
Ajax.
those emails. I think they're classified, but we can get them.
Numbers exist.
You can't Smite Guru the Hi Rez employees. Sadly.
I mean, you
Yeah.
can. But Smite Guru has its own inaccuracies. So it's like, it's really just one of those things that it's kind of mostly a thing that, whenever you're a lead designer of a game, people are going to at you, and sometimes it's positive and sometimes it's negative. And most of the time, a lot of time you hear the negative more than you hear the positive. And this is kind of true across all industries and in all games. You get this vocal minority, and so you'll hear that. And that's something we're very prepared to handle here. Pon helped me through that dark time of heavy criticism, and we sorted for the important parts. And people who focused on just hating a specific person aren't really contributing very well to the game as a whole, or aren't really giving us that great of feedback most of the time. So we sort through those threads, find the things that we really can change, can fix, and can work on in the game, and go forward from there. And we just all Hi Rez employees are encouraged to play Smite as much as they can, to just stay relevant and understand the game and share the feelings that our players feel. And I think having designers like Pon and I on the game that feel those feelings and share those, and I get ganked by OP gods at the same time as you guys, and be like, yeah, okay, I see where that Reddit post is coming from now. Like, we get that epiphany on a daily basis, and that's really what you want from your game devs, I think. Asking for them to be pro level caliber while maintaining normal lives and also having vast amounts of diverse experience and playing every other game in the market. It seems like a bit much to ask.
I got Masters Conquest.
Yeah, well, you're better than me, but
all right. So I feel like that's a pretty good answer to that question. Freight's already saying it in our private chat here. He's never talking shit about Ajax again. You firmly won over.
You shut me up hard. I was like, oh, I didn't know all that. I didn't know that history lesson at all.
If I die of a bad fight, if I die of a bad fight in game and die, you should definitely call me, say rip or something.
Filthy joust main. All right.
I try to queue all the game modes diversely now, but
now. All right. So
times where I get in my hot streaks or whatever. Pon had something to add.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I think the only other thing I wanted to add, right, is this is a studio with a huge team behind it, right? So even just targeting a single person isn't really representative. Like targeting AJ for like a specific balance change when there's an entire team behind it and a whole bunch of playtests behind it, like it's not even targeting necessarily the right person. It's a good place to kind of siphon feedback because he's the one that kind of oversees a lot of things. But there's entire teams behind these things, and so I think we saw this with another game recently. Someone just really, like a whole group, were actively targeted another person, and it just isn't necessarily healthy. It isn't representative of the company as a whole, and so it just kind of feels weird to see people get targeted specifically. Anyway.
Yeah. All right, so I think that's it for our questions, but we did make a subreddit post, as we tend to do for these types of things, and we got two questions I'm going to pull from there. The first one is from Hazer, and he wants to know why rank gotta be so bad? What do? He's saying anything could have been done by now, and all they get is radio silence. And I'm gonna call bullshit on you, Hazer. You're not getting fucking radio silence. I'm gonna be mad on Hi Rez's behalf because I see this fucking question time and time again. And you guys are answering it. You're saying, "Hey, this is what we had. This is our plan. This is what we have in place right now. We did the hard reset at the beginning of season 4. And then we're gonna have all the placement stuff right there. All right, so that's our spring. Going in after that, we're gonna have a soft reset, and things are gonna change. Like things are gonna shake up. People are gonna fall out. People should be closer to where they should be. That's where we're at. But you guys have said that so much. I feel like people either A, don't believe it, or B, it just has lost all meaning. It's like when you say a word so many times that you just don't even, it just sounds at that point. And I feel like that's what's happening. So for the sake of, people like Hazer, the really smart, intelligent, Smite community members, do you guys have like an in-place contingency plan? If this soft reset doesn't work, if that doesn't solve the issues that people are saying where you're getting really bad people up in Masters or, Diamond or Platinum, whatever, like, surely you guys have something in place, but you just haven't stated yet?
Yeah, first, let me just, we'll take this in two parts. I'm kind of talking about what's happening right now, and then Pon will kind of go cover what's coming forward.
Okay.
So honestly, we expected a lot of the results of the hard reset. We knew that it had a risky, it was risky. There was a lot of benefits to it, but it also had some downsides. And one of the benefits of a hard reset is giving players a fresh start, right? Some of those players made a really good jump off of that fresh start. You know, when you're averaging in thousands of matches over years, and that's all wiped away, and you get to play the best that you've played so far, and also in a brand new season with lots of changes, like that can heavily favor maybe players that you thought weren't so good. They maybe are better than they seem, but you know, the numbers there played out for them that way. So a lot of it is just expected results from the hard reset. It was a really good thing to do. It's something that we probably won't do again for a very long time. But it was really nice to re-energize the entire community to want to play some ranked and see really how their skills were. The other thing is the split system. So we implemented a system where you're gonna be ranking up throughout the entire ranks 3 or 4 times throughout the year, as opposed to having the entire year. So I've obviously, you know, just by basic math, we couldn't make it as difficult or as many games played. There can't be the same number of plays in a quarter of the time to reach those ranks. So we were also very aware of the pacing of the split. So we were making some adjustments to make sure that players could reach higher ranks at a quicker time, as long as their skill merited that. So that's kind of where we got the higher qualification matches. It didn't seem to make sense to, and we're already going to be limited on time. So the combination between the adjustments of splits as well as the hard reset resulted in a lot of these kind of things. As far as people kind of, mostly the only major negative feedback we're getting is people are accusing us that people's ranks are overinflated beyond their skill level. And I'm telling you, those are the two things that mathematically and logically kind of created this feeling, but we also don't really feel like that's as extreme as people are saying. A lot of these players who are at a higher rank, they deserve to be at that rank. And maybe everybody has bad games, you know, and everybody has pick roles they don't play or gods they don't play as much sometimes, and they don't do so hot. But for a majority of those players, they're in a relatively close spot to where they should be. And if they're really doing that horribly and ruining your games, they're going to be demoting, and they're going to be demoting quickly and hard. Now, Hans can talk about how we're going to go forward.
So going forward, we also have, I'll address the soft reset comment a little bit. The soft reset, why we say that so much and why it matters is because the way True Skill works, soft reset is going to pull everyone a lot closer together. It's also going to adjust the variance some. And so the people who are really high up right now who maybe shouldn't be, they're going to get pulled down, and then they're going to have to re-prove themselves again. And the proving themselves again is going to take a little bit longer than it did the first time. So not only do you have to do it the second time, but they also have to do it over a longer period of time. And so you're not going to get these people who are unskilled getting too high, because they just mathematically can't. They can't keep winning games if they're unskilled. And so
LHS stays in plat. Cool. That's the goal. So LHS, I was like, LHS stays in plat. Sweet. My diamond games are safe.
So that's a big reason why I've been harping on the soft reset. Obviously, though, that if that doesn't solve it, we have a few other things up our sleeve. We can look up at how things like how much TP you gain, how much like you're adjusted per like how hard your match is. We can look at some rank systems like how the lobbies work. We can look at just a few numbers, make sure that everything's in order. We have a lot of data now gathered from a whole bunch of people playing. And so when we look at like the bell curve and how people are spread out, we can make sure that our system is in line with it. If it's not in line, we can adjust it. So going forward into season 2 or in the split 2, we have a lot of resources, a lot of math on our side. We have a lot of knobs that we can tweak. And so we are actively looking at them. We're going through all the math to make sure that we have the right numbers. And so when split 2 comes out, you'll see a lot of changes just there. And then if things are still wrong there, we can still make further adjustments, add other systems. So we're keeping a close eye on it. We literally just today, actually, right? Like we were like kind of formalizing our plans for split 2 and make sure that we had like the final plans in place. So we have a whole bunch of people here already working on it. So you guys are definitely in good hands. We're definitely not just like kind of ignoring the ranked problem. We just want to make sure that split runs its course. Split 2, we can make our adjustments, and we can actually make these adjustments split 3 as well. That's the beauty of having a split system, is you can actually make changes throughout the year without completely throwing everything out of balance. Changing numbers mid-season can have detrimental effects.
Yeah, that was one thing. It's kind of like our knee-jerk messaging, which is making heavily reactionary changes to the way ranked works in the middle of the system could have possibly really negative results. We wanted to be really careful about that too.
Yeah. When you're dealing with stats at a large sample size, small tweaks can have devastating effects. And so making sure that we do those at the right time during the right process in like the kind of pipeline is key.
And it's not just the soft reset coming forward. We have lists of other features and other mathematical things that should improve the process. Yeah. Whether or not that's all going to drop at once or be introduced a little bit over time is still being investigated. But it's safe to say that we're not expecting the soft reset to solve everything. Yeah, we're looking at other ways to improve the experience as a whole. Just whether or not we think that the system is wrong or not right now, we're just finding ways still to improve it, make it more fun, make it more playable, make it more smooth.
Yep.
I think that plays into the overarching topic. Like the theme of us talking today is no knee-jerk reactions, letting things play out, not just, oh, this isn't working. Oh God, we gotta hit abort now. Like we gotta change. Like that's having a paced and like measured response and seeing, okay, well, this is how this is playing. We can learn this if we, taking data from the whole of it instead of just a one spiked amount of time. Like that's, definitely a good thing. For stuff like this. All right, so that's our first question from the community. The second question is maybe not the most popular from our subreddit post, but it's something that I felt like needed to come up because it's another one of those things where there's a small vocal contingent that are going to be talking some shit, and it has to do with EAC, Easy Anti-Cheat.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And how when it was first announced, there was so much hate. It was so volatile. Like, oh, they're breaking the game. Oh, I'm not going to be able to play the game. Whatever. And just and then you guys came out and very patiently said, we're aware of the stuff with the drivers. If there's anything weird that goes on, we can whitelist stuff. If you contact us, if you tell us what you need, we can help. And, there was all that outrage like, oh, the one-handed Smite player can't play. And he's like, well, no, he can. You guys are just, you're wrong. And then there was, after the fact, after it came out, I didn't really see any hate anymore. It was very quiet. Gore, I think you had something on this.
Yeah, it was one of those things that I remember, like the day it happened, there was a post from PonPon about it, and we were talking about it that night on the show, and everything we discussed was just, it really depends on how Hi Rez handles it. And it really comes down to, do people trust him or not? And of course, at the time, I was just like, they're going to be able to take this and do well with it. And the minute it was implemented, the first day, there were still some kind of people like, oh, big complaints. And then those fell off. And now it's like radio silence. There's nothing coming up about it because at this point, I'm assuming that everything is working pretty much as intended.
Yeah. Well, we still have a few issues. So
I wouldn't even say we still have that many issues. We're still getting a lot of feedback about it.
Yeah.
We're not getting as big of the really gaining traction threads, but we're seeing a lot of smaller threads of people having different issues and things like that. We're also seeing a lot of people attribute just random performance issues to blaming it on EAC, which is mostly not related. So there's a little bit of confusion. There's a little bit of that, but I can tell you for sure that we have our platform and server, our back-end programmers, our smartest guys of the whole company are paying attention to this process on a daily basis. And they're monitoring, first of all, how successful it still is at banning cheaters. And it is. It's doing a really good, people say all the time, why do they need EAC? We never see any hackers. It's like, yeah, because we're good at banning them. And we want to keep it like that.
Yeah, since EAC went live, I've yet to see a speed hacking Amir or speed hacking Bacchus, and I'm so thankful.
Really good job at that. And we're really trying to collect feedback from those people who are having those isolated incidents and finding what's going on, what's weird with their setup or their ISP or something, so we can make sure that we maximize the most number of people who can play Smite without any issues, really.
Yeah, I think the big thing is if EAC wasn't benefiting us in any way or it was causing massive issues, we would be heavily looking at what do we need to do to make sure it's fixed. Right now, I think we talked that there was 600 bans every day for hacking in that post. I think we're down to our systems only handling 100 of them, and that's mostly because EHC we haven't ramped up fully. But that's 500 people a day that aren't even getting into the game to be able to cheat. which is a huge success, and it's making the new player experience way better because that's where most of the hackers were.
Yeah.
So we're seeing huge positives from it, and we're also monitoring to make sure that like people aren't constantly getting disconnected. There's not massive people getting disconnected. People who are, we're looking at fixing that. And in general, we see very, very small numbers. Now, those numbers, when they're disconnected, it obviously sucks, and we're working to fix that. We have a whole platform team downstairs constantly monitoring EAC to make sure it's not causing massive problems. And then we're working to fix those isolated issues. So I think the key there is the issues are very, very isolated. And we're working to make sure that those isolated problems are just no problems in the future.
Okay. All right. So I think that's it. Freight, do you have any last things that you want to ask that are really important, not Power Rangers related, and not just bullshit?
I don't know now. I mean, you just put me on the spot.
I
honestly,
so
I
that's
just want to say, honestly, it's not really a question. Just thanks for coming on, and you guys kick ass. It's an honor to sit there and talk to you guys. The fact that you're willing to talk to the community and do this stuff is what makes me want to continue to play Smite and enjoy the game. And as a caster, me and Gore, myself, like I love that you guys have answers for these, and you are working toward a future plan to make the game better. Because I've been playing for 3 years. I'm not a Masters player, but I feel like I'm right where I am. I think things are going in the right direction, and I just appreciate what you guys do. And I don't think you get too many thank yous. So thanks from me at least.
Thank you. We really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's great. We just want to make sure we keep an open dialogue with everybody in the community. And we, even the threads that seem mostly negative, we're really happy that people are there and discussing it and proposing their own ideas and fixes and changes and coming from all different types of backgrounds and sharing their opinions. That's just like super great for us too. We really enjoy it.
Yeah, it's really funny. Obviously Gore and Freight have been playing Smite for a long time. Personally, a year ago today, I was just gearing up to play my first Smite games and watch my first. The spring fling of last year was the first interaction I'd ever had with Hi Rez and Smite. That was my entry point into the world of Smite and the SPL.
Oh, did you see F Dot with the spider on his face?
I saw everything.
Oh,
I had no context for any of it, and then so. Watching that, and I'll be honest, I've said this before. I was one of those guys in the chat lurking around, didn't understand the community, didn't know all of the importance of the spring fling, but was in chat. And I was like, oh, there's gonna be codes here. I'll get some free shit for Smite. I'll sit around and watch this, and then moving on to the SPL, watching the SPL, and then getting hooked. And then here I am a year later, hosting this Smite show, talking to PonPon and Ajax, and it's just such a weird feeling to have in such a short period of time, going from somebody who knew nothing, some pleb, into now I'm having a deep discussion about the game of shut your goddamn mouth, FreightTrain. So
that's a positive for Smite, but it also speaks a little bit to yourself too, man. You gotta give yourself some credit. I'm sure you worked hard for that.
Yeah. All right, Gore, same thing. You got anything else to say? Add on?
Pretty much the same thing that Freight said. You guys get a lot of flack because, again, the vocal minority, you're going to hear more negatives. I think that's exactly what you had said. But just as a thank you, I mean, I've loved this game for years. This game has had a huge impact on me. Hi Rez actually was one of the places that when I was younger, I wanted to go into game design. I wanted to get into programming and stuff like that. And playing Smite really kind of kicked that drive into where I needed it to be, start working harder, and really seeing where it's going now. I'm just excited for the future.
Awesome, man. Hey, if you design a game, shoot me a link. I'll love to play it.
Awesome. There you go.
There we go. That's your in. Yeah.
Get us on the caster first. We need that inside track. Then we'll
All right. So that's it for our questions. Ajax, Pon, this is the part of the show where we give the floor to you. We give you our soapbox to stand on. You have a captive audience. Is there anything that you guys want to say directly to either us, the community, whoever? The floor is yours to say whatever you want.
I mean, sure. We're going to give some thank yous out to everybody. I really want to thank all of our community members, specifically the people that are out there creating content, making videos, making the thought-provoking posts, and even the best memes too. That's all very important, and I really applaud you for creating that stuff. So big thanks to you guys for that. Really big thanks to all of our pros. I really like our pro scene. I think we have a really healthy, very positive, helpful community where a lot of the pros are very friendly with each other and And even though stuff goes down and people change teams and stuff like that, most of the time there's not any real bad blood, and we have a fun time just enjoying the stories and enjoying the game. Want to say thanks to everyone here at Hi Rez. Like, we have an amazing team, and like we discussed before, sometimes Pon and I are in the front of it, but there's a huge amount of people that have our backs, and like our artists and programmers have just been killing it lately.
Yeah.
Their work is amazing. The guys who have been here running the studio, Todd and Erez and Stu and Zier, the designers who worked on Smite before us, thanks to those guys for setting such a great foundation for us to build upon. Like, that's really why Smite continues to be successful. So really just super happy, and I hope everyone knows that, like, me and Pon are super grateful and feel humbled every day just to be in this position. And although we might seem like we're more pompous than we are, I think most of the time we're pretty down to earth people, and we really consider ourselves very similar to a real player in as many ways as possible. So thanks to everybody who has fun out there playing Smite and talk massive amounts of bad words to each other. I appreciate those people too. So yeah, just super, super grateful and super happy with how things have been going, and feel very lucky and stoked to be where we are.
Yeah, I have similar sentiments. I want to thank you guys for having us on here and talk to people more directly. I often just behind the computer monitor writing those Twitter posts and Reddit posts, but I love talking about the game. I've always been super involved in it for a long time, so I want to thank you guys for having us on, and just thank the community at large. I mean, for example, like 4 years ago when I started playing Smite at closed beta, I wouldn't have even thought I'd be sitting here talking about my design position at all, and like talking about like the game at this level. And so the community that's been around forever and been talking about the game forever, I just want to give a shout out to you guys. Thanks so much for being here and playing Smite. It's great.
All right. Yeah. So again, huge thanks for you guys coming on. That was probably one of our best interviews yet. I mean, we're sitting here almost at an hour. Definitely longest interview yet. Yeah, and Pon, just so you know, you have an open invitation to come back so we can talk to you one-on-one. We want to talk to you about your change from going as a young Smite jungler and then evolving into the beautiful system designer you are now.
They don't want to talk to me one-on-one. I'm not a pro.
We'll have you back on too, Ajax. That's just me kind of being spiteful about, you not talking to me earlier. That's just...
Yeah, there you go.
Oh,
that's your spite.
I deserved it then.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. We'll find a time. Generally, like, I'm super busy, but we can definitely find a time to work it in.
All right. So that's it, guys. Thanks for coming on the show. And we throw it back to future us to end the show now.